Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for making time on this Saturday morning to join us on this webinar series. This has been a dream of mine for a few years now to organize a session with various professors from various disciplines to talk about the books that matter to them, stories that they read that matter to them. I come from the literature program at Faculty Science, Social and Humanities. And one of the things that I notice is that a lot of the times students will tell me, Dr. Rai, I'm not a reader. I don't like to read, you know. And as somebody who comes from the literature background, I can say when I was growing up, I wasn't a reader either. In fact, there's an article that I just shared on the chat line, if you want to have a look at it. I stuttered when I was asked to read in school during class, English class. I would stutter because I wasn't a good reader, you know. Literally, I couldn't read very well and I didn't find it enjoyable. And I find that one of the things we miss out on in the beauty of reading is that how we choose the books to read. And I think in today's conversation, you get to hear how one very renowned professor in her discipline, how books have impacted her and how she sometimes chooses the book. And I think more importantly, sometimes the books choose her. You know, in terms of come and read me, come and open my book and read me, you know. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Professor Datuk Dr. Harlina Halizah Siraj, who is a professor of OB/GYN and medical education, clinical teaching at the Faculty of Medicine, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Prof. Har is, I will call her Prof. Har all this throughout this session. She's Kak Har for me, but during this session, she's Prof. Harlina. Prof. Har, she received her clinical training in Hospital Kuala Lumpur before returning to her alma mater to complete her specialty degree in OB/GYN. She's very, very interesting resume. So I want to make time to kind of like spell it out so that we see the context from which she is coming from. Yeah. She was an honorary fellow at the Antenatal Diagnostics Center at National University Hospital, Singapore, and an International Federal Obstetrics and Gynecology Fellow at the Department of OB/GYN and Women's Health at the School of Medicine, University of Minnesota, United States of America. She is dedicated to clinical teaching and learning, and she has completed her graduate certificate of clinical teaching, a graduate diploma of clinical education, and also a master's of clinical education from University of Melbourne, Australia. Her area of research interests include family planning and contraception, adolescent sexual and reproductive health, as well as clinical teaching and medical professionalism. Besides that, she also is very actively involved in promoting and advocating for the well-being of and sexual reproductive health of adolescent girls and underprivileged women. And she's been doing this, in various contexts. She has served as the president of Malaysian Association of Maternal and Neonatal Health for 2 terms. She was also the chair of Social Development Committee of IKRAM Malaysia from 2010 to 2014, and was also appointed as the advisor of Raudatus Sakinah Center for Adolescent Girls from 2012 to 2014. She led the women's section of Jamaah Islam Malaysia, JIM, as the national head for 10 years, from 1999 to 2009. She was also a 3-time recipient of UKM Quality Award and a 2-time recipient of UKM Excellent Teacher Award. She was nominated for the Great Women of Our Times Award by Malaysian Women's Weekly in 2009. In 2011, the government of Selangor, her state of origin, awarded her with Sayyidatina Khadijah Award in commemoration of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's birthday. Since October 2018, she has been appointed as a member of Board of Directors for Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka, DBP. And in 2019, she was awarded a medallion, Pingat Mahkota Wilayah, by the King of Malaysia, which carries the title Datuk. She's also currently the founder and director of Academy Dr. Har and the chairperson of Mawa Leadership Foundation, as well as a member of Malaysian National Council for Children. So, given this kind of context from which Prof. Har comes from, let's have a listen to, stories that matter to her, books that have impacted her, not just now as a public figure today, but during her seminal growth as a young girl, and then moving forward into adolescence and then young adulthood and so on. So Prof. Har, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all. Can you hear me, right? Maybe
yes.
A thumbs up. All right, okay. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Raihanah for this opportunity, and knowing that I am the first to kick off this, hopefully a series that is going to be, something that we will always, waiting for. And I guess this is really something that we have to do, storytelling, and because we might have missed this bit of telling our story, because of, I guess we are so busy doing this and that. And so I would like to thank you, Rai, for giving me this opportunity. And it is indeed, down the memory lane for me. I think we should do this quite often. I mean, in fact, I would like to be your host, Rai, for your bookshelves, and knowing the story behind how you actually reach this stage after being what you said as not really a keen reader, okay? So for me, I was born 55 years ago. 1st June is going to be my birthday. And inshallah, by my 56th birthday, inshallah, next year, I will actually start my retirement from UKM, definitely, but not really, from what I've been doing. So I guess this is really a good closure kind of thing, coming up to my retirement from UKM. And of course, when you asked me to do this, I actually spent maybe up to 2 a.m. this morning because I just couldn't stop looking through the books that I have read so far. So I'm going to share this, and I would like to spend more time of discussing with our, the participant of this webinar. I really, value their presence, for prioritizing this. Otherwise, you'll be doing something else, right? So thank you for being with us, and I really hope that, my sharing is going to be something that we all can learn. All right, I will share my slide now. Okay, right. So this is basically, I actually visited this great library of Iskandaria in 2019, and as an avid reader, the feeling of being in a library that has been established for years, since the day of the Roman Empire, it gives you goosebumps, okay? And I guess this is a reader is not just going to read a book. It will start a journey, and I realized that most of my journey is actually centered around the books that I have read, okay? So basically, of course, as a Muslim, the one that motivates me most to read is this Iqra bismi rabbikal ladhi khalaq. The first sentence that was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, and it is that beauty words of read, Iqra. Okay? And it is in the name of God, in the name of Allah, who has created all that exists. So I remember my father. Okay, I have to sort of, go back to the day where my first memory about my father was he would be reading. He would always have a book in his hand, and in the morning like this, he would be sitting. If he's not in his office, he would be sitting in a kind of armchair. Next to the window, and the natural light was actually behind him, and he would be reading and wearing his thick, reading glass. If it's not book, it will always be newspaper. And I can see that he was always very engrossed with the book. I remember most probably thinking that I would like to be a book, I would like to be held by my father like that. Okay. And of course, my reading journey started with this. I'm sure all of us are like this kind, right? I started my Muqaddam maybe at the age of 4 or 5, and this was totally under my mother's patronage, And my mother was amazing. I was so amazed with her, because when I'm reading the Quran, she would be sitting, opposite of me. So the Quran would have been upside down to her, but she could really, correct all my mistakes. And I would look up at my mother and say, wow, she's amazing. And that's beside so many other things, that amaze me. And alhamdulillah, I'm so honored that my mother, who is 83 years old, is currently staying with me, right? My father was a qadi, the officer for the Islamic affair in the district. So it has always been books in my life. My father would make sure that, we spend our money on books. He would actually send us to these bookshops, and he would wait outside there for me to choose my books, And so I guess that was a very important foundation for me as a reader, yeah. And then this is it. When I was 7, I think that was when I was in standard 1, and my school was at that time. That was the first year that the school was becoming Sekolah Rendah Kebangsaan. Before that, it was Sekolah Rendah Jenis Kebangsaan Inggeris. So it was actually English medium. Yeah, and my brother was who is 6 years older than me. He was in standard 6 at that time. I was standard 1. But all the teachers in that school were basically using English, and they were starting to use a lot more of Bahasa Melayu. But and then my brothers, my elder brothers and sisters, they were already in their boarding school then, And I have my arwah eldest brother, who will always came back from KL. He was in Sekolah Alam Shah with these comics, Bino, Biza, and Dandy. And my life was full with this. I think at that time there was some Bahasa Melayu comic as well, like Bujal. Yeah, I think I remember Bujal very well. But this was more interesting. I couldn't wait, for my brother to come home from for holidays, and he would had all this. These are all used and secondhand comics. And I would, so these are the comics that introduced to me the vocabulary of Dennis the Menace, I know Ginger is...
Sorry, Prof, your mic is off, Prof.
The host was suddenly... Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, brilliant.
I was just being muted. Okay, anyway. And then... and of course, Dandy with this character. My life was full with these characters. They are really troublemakers, but at the end, there will always be message at the end of that. My vocabulary then was all about this. York pudding, and like this one, hey, it swerved again. So I would look up into the dictionary, what does swerve mean, So, and I know that it is like coming back like a boomerang or something like that, okay? Then of course, Enid Blyton, right? I'm sure you remember this Enid Blyton, but my primary school was full with Enid Blyton. And this was the time when my sister, my second sister, she was studying in Sheffield, UK at that time. And she would always write to me Enid Blyton's book, The Famous Five, The Secret Seven, and of course, Mallory Towers. This is when I dream of going to a residential school that has a lot of mystery. I do not know whether we have Enid Blyton, an author like Enid Blyton nowadays. Maybe, if Harry Potter, that might be the analogy of the books that was during my time. And I remember that this book was actually translated to Bahasa Melayu. So most probably, I started off with this Bahasa Melayu book, Lima Sekawan di Pulau Pusaka, was actually 5 on a treasure island. And Lima Sekawan di Tepi Laut, 5 go down to the sea. Okay, so I actually read the Bahasa Melayu first. This was, I think, published by Fagos, if I'm not mistaken. And I realized that this was actually translated from a series of English books. And later on, I started to read the English version of all this. And then when I was in standard 6, okay, before that, where did I get this supply of books, right? This was the time where I was from Sungai Besar, Selangor. That was the northern part of Selangor. We do not have a public library, but every 2 weeks, there would be this perpustakaan bergerak, this moving library. And that was indeed something that consolidate my passion to reading, and of course my father, very instrumental in that. He would announce the night before. It's always Saturday like this. My father would say, okay, tomorrow by 8 we shall go to our Dewan Orang Ramai, the parking lot. That is where this moving library, mobile library is going to park, and I would wait there. I remember always waiting there because we were always quite early. My father would, bring me and my younger sister there with the 2 books that I borrowed from the previous 2 weeks, and we got to know the pakcik who drove the mobile library and also become the librarian. That was the time when I said, I want to be a librarian like him. Okay, where he would put his, small table and, sit there and with this box where he would find the card that is just to, make sure that I return the book, and then he would give me and I say, Harlina, anta simpan buku tu. So I would actually go to the shelf where I took it out 2 weeks before that, and because I was a very frequent visitor, so we were supposed to just borrow 2 books, but then I remember towards the end he said, okay, you can borrow 3 books, and then later on 4 books. Okay, that was like it's like the lottery of my life. And then when I was standard 6, I was 12, we had our own library, and that was actually in the building of my father's office. My father was a Qadi, and the office was actually in the Jabatan, the district office. So there was a small library, and this was my heaven. Whenever I have to wait for my father would pick me up from school, and then while waiting for my father, to finish his office, and I would immerse myself in this library. And that was the time I encountered Asterix and Obelix. Okay, this was again a comic book, but this is totally different than Dino, Beezer, and Dandy. And this is focusing on Asterix, who is actually and Obelix, his good friend. And this was the time when I realized, okay, it's a very interesting history there, because his enemy would always be the Roman legion soldiers. And I remember at one occasion, Asterix got to, meet the Cleopatra, so and what still stick in my mind was this first page of that book, of that comic. It's always be this. I said, Europe then was actually conquered by the Rome, except for a small village by the sea. And this is actually the small village where Asterix and the whole character and the druid here, who would actually make this magic potion, and Asterix will actually, drink that. Obelix do not have to drink this magic potion, because when he was small, he actually fall into the cauldron, and he becomes so strong. So, and it's always that in a way, this was the comic that teach me about resistance. Resistance is about you having had to defend your place from enemies. So even though it's actually a comic book, but it has a very I would say a very important message about defending your land, something like that. Okay. And then, of course, I went to Sri Putri for my secondary school. And this is another different door being opened to me. Okay, so they have these sets for the English classes. So I was in set A, to my surprise, because to me, I would be in set C, most probably, or maybe set B, because my vocabulary then, was totally dandy, Bino, Bizer, and Asterix Obelix. Okay, but then I was in set A, and we had to read these class readers. Okay, and these are books that we need to finish within 1 month or maybe 2 months, depending on the thickness of the book. But this is always around, the most would be 200 pages. My first class reader for the set was actually Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And I remember reading it. It gave me all the uneasy feeling about, how cold the weather is according to the books, and Heathcliff and all the characters. And of course, we have to read like 4 chapters a week. And on Monday, we would have this quiz where my teacher would say, how old was Heathcliff when he was so and so? So you really need to know that. So I was forced to read this, but I'm starting to enjoy it. Yeah, and definitely my vocabulary improves. I remember my main problem with English then, was preposition. I do not know why it is, over, above, beyond. And I realized if you read a lot more of English books, and you would naturally know this. It's like something ingrained within those pages. And then the next one was Rebecca. I think Rebecca was in Form 2. This was the time where I feel, wow, fallen in love with somebody or being married to somebody can actually, this is my first exposure to most probably domestic violence, and of course, Animal Farm. And Animal Farm was, there's a lot more readers actually, right? But these are the 4 readers that I could still recall. Animal Farm was a bit, to me, challenging because then I have to read about the pigs, and how we as, being raised, pigs is definitely, you don't talk about it, because you don't eat it. But in Animal Farm, and the characters, definitely, the pigs and the cows. And I remember my teacher was saying, this is an analogy about what happened in a human society. And then I said, oh, all right. It's something about sociology. I mean, socialist society, right? Something like that. And I said, as a maybe 15-year-old, that was an introduction about how complex our human society connection and interaction. And then I remember in Form 5, most probably, that was the time when we were really quite matured. Our class reader was this, No Highway, okay, by Neville Shute. Wow, this was the most difficult, right? Because the vocabulary was mind-blowing. And I remember this was the first time I encountered the word fatigue, F-A-T-I-G-U-E, fatigue. And and I realized fatigue is not just about being tired, but the surface of the plane can have fatigue as well. Wow, that was the time when I realized that one word can explain so many things, because this was related to a air crash, I think, and it's due to the fatigue of the surface of the plane, something like that. Okay. And then this one, I was introduced to this. Okay, of course, as a girl, teenagers, Mills and Boon. And I realized my friends were really crazy about this. And we have the whole box of Mills and Boons. But I wasn't so impressed with Mills and Boon, except for this tall, dark, and handsome. But I would rather read Barbara Cartland. Okay, and to me, Barbara Cartland was, it really stretched my imagination, because this happened, during those times of Victoria, and it's always this forced love, the reluctant bride, and the problem of love. So I actually just read Mills and Boon to fulfill the requirement. We need to read maybe like one Mills and Boon a week, something like that. But I always just flick through Mills and Boon, because I think it's so predictable. Okay, the first page is about how this girl meet this man, and then in the middle there will always be the third person, either another man or another woman, and then finally at the end, they are getting back together. Okay, so I am not so impressed. But I have a friend who actually read 20 to 25 Mills Boon a day. Like, oh my God, and so my Mills Boon wasn't so impressive to me. Okay. But of course, I remember there was list of author for the Mills and Boon that were actually blacklisted. We have this list of names like this Betty Beatty. These are all okay lah, but there are some names there where the content of the Mills and Boon are a bit more steamy, I guess, than the rest. But these are the one that we always had going around. The one that your English teacher said, don't read this. That is the one that you are going to read. Yeah, okay. Now I am more attracted to Sidney Sheldon, okay? Because I think it is love story, but there's always this plot twist. I love Rage of Angels, Windmills of the Gods, The Sense of Time, The Other Side of Midnight. And when there was actually series from these books, I think the favorite actress was Jacqueline Smith. But this was the time I realized that, even if they're going to make a movie or a series, a TV series out of it, it's not the same as reading it. Okay, so this was the time when I realized, I was very excited, because there was in this TV show, but I realized that when I watched that, because I have read the book, I said, no, it did not capture what I have read in the book. Yeah, so I realized that reading books is definitely something that I must go on doing. This was the time where I read The Thornbirds, and this was really on forbidden love, because this is between a priest and a girl that has grown from a little girl, and now she becomes so so pretty, and she got herself married to another person, but coming back to the priest. So this was really through the books you can see the conflicts, okay? And when you put yourself inside there, what will you do if you are in this situation? That was the time where most likely I started to have some kind of maturity. Yeah. So Thornbird was really a novel that I read cover to cover. Yeah. And I wasn't a fan of Richard Chamberlain. Yeah? I don't find him handsome, but I think the story is more interesting than the TV show. And after my SPM, I went to, and this was the time where I realized that when I go to bookshops or bookstores or book exhibition, it was the book that chose me rather than the other way around, I remember this was in a small bookshop, I couldn't recall where. But this book was just, at one corner, and I was attracted to, as if there is a calling there, and I saw this book, The Mahdi, from A.J. Quinnell, and this was, I don't know how many of you have read this, but this was really, explaining how the Mahdi is going to come, and this is really, using the technology, and this quite related to me as a Muslim, okay? And I remember reading this and feeling very worried about, this can happen, and this, you know, this light kind of something from above was actually a satellite signal that disintegrate the goat. You know, they put in some satellite detector inside there, and you know, the story was so intricate. You know, the person that is being groomed to be the Mahdi, he himself did not realize that he was actually a part of a pawn in the game. You know, so that was the time when maybe this was my understanding about espionage and, you know, spy world and everything. You know, so wow, this is, I would like to read this again. Now, then I go to my medical school, okay? And then I realized that my reading is more towards medical, of course, with the textbook. Yeah, I couldn't have time to read, but I remember in 1980, this is when I was in Form 2 actually, and I read this in my school, one of the Reader's Digest, Give the Lady a Knife by Elizabeth Morgan. But when I was in first year, I managed to get hold of this book. I did not remember how, but it was given to me, but it was a second-hand book, The Making of a Woman Surgeon. And wow, it was really something that made me realize how difficult it is to become a doctor. And this was most likely the book that introduced to me the concept of gender discrimination and, you know, gender relationships. And of course, if anyone of you have followed Elizabeth Morgan, she became very famous in the 90s because she was having this, you know, legal proceeding about her, I think, accusing her husband she was a plastic surgeon, and the husband was an oral surgeon, for abusing their daughter Hillary, you know. So that was in the 90s, where I was already a doctor, and I just followed the story. But of course, Elizabeth Morgan made a huge impact on me. It's like telling me the story about the challenges that I'm going to face as a doctor. And then, of course, the medical thrillers, Homa, Fever, Brain. I think I must have read more of Robin Cook's book, but these are the three that still stick in my mind. Of course, you know, there's Outbreak. There's also a lot more Pandemics, okay, by Robin Cook. And I would read this during my semester break. Of course, this is a time where I start to realize that, you know, I need to fill up my spirituality, and coming from a background, family background, you know, that has brought me up, you know, so much in the Islamic framework. So my first book I remember was Samudra Al-Fatihah by Bay Arifin. So Bay Arifin has a lot of influence in me. This was the book that introduced to me the importance of going deeper into just reading it. You know, it's more of taking the lesson from the Quran. Hidup Sesudah Mati, I read this in Form 2, but it was the Jawi version. It's a small book, but this was the one that I said, I want to be a doctor because I want to breathe in and out every day, being a servant of God. Okay, and then when I die, I want to hear that God said to me, Harlina, mission accomplished. That was in Form 2, you know, like the purpose of me being, you know, created in this world, or whatever assignment that I had. That was after I read this book. And then, of course, I have Bimbingan Mukminin, Risalah Usrah. Sejarah Umat Islam has a lot of impact in me. You know, I read most of the story together with what my ustazah taught me. And I found Sejarah Umat Islam is more interesting than what my ustazah taught me in class. And of course, Apa Erti Saya Menganut Islam, Masa Yakni by Hatiyakan. So that was most probably the first foundation of my Islamic reading. Yeah, I was given this. It was come to me as a gift. These 3 books, and that was the first batch of self-help books that I received. The year 2000 was very significant because that was more or less the first year that I become the national head of Jamaah Islam Malaysia Gym, where at the age of 33 or 34, I had to lead the whole organization of women and men as well. And these are people who are much, much more senior than me. So I started to read about this. I found these 7 habits of highly effective people so relatable. And then developing the leaders around me. This was the first time I know about the V formation of the GIS. And, you know, it's more of collective leadership. And of course, Dale Carnegie's how to win friends and influence people. Yeah. This was a time where I started to become a doctor, more matured in that. I was taken aback by this book that I found, Doktor, Bagaimana Akhlakmu. This was, you know, I was in Jakarta visiting my brother, and we went to this Gramuda, I think, the Gramedia, that is the biggest store. And this book was just there, again, calling me. Yeah? It's a small book. I was just going to that shelf and I picked this up. And I was like, and I read this. The next thing was that I am going to look into medical professionalism. If other people are looking into the gist of medicine, I'm going to look into their professionalism. And then, of course, I help out the personal and professional development module in MD-UKM program. And this become the books that I read. The Lost Art of Healing by Bernard Lound, yeah, Nobel Prize winner. How Doctors Think, Jerome Groopman. This is a Harvard professor, but at the same time, down under, Catherine Montgomery in Australia wrote the same title, How Doctors Think, within the same year. You know, so this is again, right? But of course, they are 2 different authors. Then I gravitate towards books on thinking. I get very obsessed, and Edward de Bono became my favorite because he's definitely the okay, 5 minutes more, right? Okay. He's definitely the brain programmer. Okay. The 6 thinking hats help me organize more of not just personality differences, but also the way we think and how we should think. You know, having all these hats. Teach your child how to think. I think that now that I have my own children. I guess this is the most important skill I need to teach my children. And the most recent in my collection is how to have a beautiful mind. Okay. I remember in this book, De Bono was saying that maybe if you are in a party, you see somebody so pretty, but you know, or maybe good looking, but he or she is alone. And even when he or she is trying to engage in a conversation, you know, it's not successful. As compared to one person, might not be so gorgeous looking, but there are so many people around him or her, you know, wanting to have discussion or wanting to hear what this person has to say. And De Bono was saying that, you know, the difference between these 2 people is their mind. And the person that could gather this crowd, you know, listening to him or her, is definitely a person with a more beautiful mind. Okay, so then, right. I always marvel Harvard Gardner. He's the one who introduced the multiple intelligence, but I found that this book, 5 Minds for the Future, in 2008. And this is another book that called me to pick it up in, I think, one of the airports. Yeah. And of course, Emotional Intelligence is another one by Daniel Goleman. Yeah. Remember the 7 habits of highly effective people that was given to me. Then, of course, after that, I found all reading related to Stephen Covey is always very enjoyable. I bought The Speed of Trust. And I remember in the first, I think in the prologue, he was saying that, you know, we are in the era of crisis, yeah, where we have trust crisis. We don't trust our people. And I enjoy Sean Covey's, who's his eldest son, when he wrote about the 7 habits of highly effective teens. And I think it helps me in raising my teens and all my teens at that time, my children, they read this book as well. Okay, so, and I remember Stephen Covey's forward about this book and said, and Sean, I never thought that I were actually listening. So I think that was a beautiful relationship between a father and a son, you know, and I guess it was, yeah, I can imagine how proud Stephen Covey was in looking into this book that the son is actually now, a writer himself and an author of books. Okay, when I start to juggle responsibility, then I start to look for books. And this is another book that called me in Payless, I think. This is a second-hand book, Life Balance. I'm so grateful to Linda and Richard Ayer because they actually introduced to me the three balance, attitude balance, goal balance, and priority balance. And not I think long after I read this book, my senior actually, Dr. Surya, introduced to me this book, and I cringe when I look at this. The Surrendered Wife, and said, no, you have to read this book. And I can relate so much with Laura Doyle because Laura Doyle was a very ambitious woman like me, but she realized that her relationship was getting more strange with the husband because she was a control freak. And at that time, I'm not having any problem as yet, but I know that might be the direction I'm going if I don't change a lot of things. So this book was an eye-opener, but I really hate the topic, sorry. And I guess the most recent was the same author writing The Empowered Wife. I think this is more of my liking. Okay. Biographies, I engrossed with biographies. Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela. I love Abraham Lincoln. And the most recent biography that I read and I enjoy most was Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. I am more. I gravitated to black men most probably, except for Abraham Lincoln. Okay. My favorite author is definitely Tarikh Ramadan. I had most of his book. The one that I finished reading cover to cover was this, just before his detainment. And I'm now reading The Quest for Meaning. Now, these are the book that has chosen me recently. Recently means the past 2 years, Of course, Mindset, this is by Carol Dweck. This is, my student would know that I always talk about growth and fixed mindset. I found Falsafah Hidup that I read maybe in Form 3 and very much more meaningful now. This book actually called me up just after PRU 14, a good time to be a girl, and these are books that I read during my long flights, and I enjoy Simon Sinek's Start With Me a while. New Arrival, it means that these are the one that is going to be read soon, The Fight Against This Age. Rob Raymond, it's very simple, very thin book, but mind-blowing because, he talked about fascisms and he just explained what is happening now, And 10 Lessons for Post-Pandemic World by Farid Zakaria, the CNN journalist. I am engrossed into followership now because I guess, we are talking too much about leadership, but I guess followership is as important, if not more important. And of course, on women and leadership, So these are my own books. I know none of you have actually read this. But I would produce and inshallah write more books after this, And what's next? I think Dr. Rai has said about my academy, Dr. Har, this is not going to be a physical academy, This is a virtual academy, but where, anyone who wants to upgrade their potential and their capacity can have, some part of this academy, and everyone can be the, student of this academy. You don't have to have SPM or maybe degree. Okay? You might not even be able to read and write, but this academy invites you to be there. This is the philosophy that I think every individual has the rights to be more wise, to be wiser, to be healthier, in their well-being, and of course to be happier. Basically, this is the mission statement. We are going to have projects, educational projects that are unique, creative, and extraordinary. And this would more or less tailor-made to your own potential. Okay, and using the approach of definitely using this digital technology and collaboration. You cannot do this alone. It's all collaboration, all the way. The tagline is, wiser, healthier, and happier. And I just want to announce, where do I want to bring I have so many books in my shelf now, and I want to share that with others. So we are planning to have this car books project where we go to the B40s, maybe to the rural poor and the urban poor. There's a study that shows the B40, when you go to their house, they hardly had even a single book for their children, you know, like, and I feel very guilty because my children, and now it's my granddaughter, even when she's only 22 months, but she already have a small corner, you know, where books are mainly there. And whenever I video call her, she would always have a book in her hand. So I really think that we need to bring books to this, you know, underprivileged. And of course, I would have to have my book cafe where people can come and enjoy the book that I have read. So, right, that would be it, you know. So now I hand it over to you. Right.
That was so much fun. I had such a blast just listening to you, taking down notes. I'm thinking, okay, this is another book I'm going to read. That's another book I'm going to have to KIV, you know. So, okay, that was so much fun. You know, you covered a lot of things. So I'm going to open the discussion for any questions if you have. But I'm gonna get it started, Prof, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You know, because as you were, I like the fact that you grounded your discussion in terms of book selection, in terms of the way you grew as a young person. You know, very highly impressed by your dad. Right, highly impressed by his personality. So he was a very dominant figure in your life, right?
Yeah. Right.
So was he ever questioning your selection of you're reading comics? Were you reading comics?
No.
What kind of comics are those? Let me have a look. Did he have those kinds of moments with you? Have you ever had? Do you recall having such moments where Dad would say, why are you reading that? Do you think that's good for you? Have you ever come across such moments in your childhood or your girlhood?
No. I now that I look back, I realize that my father, he trusted us very much. You know, not just me, the whole siblings. You know, of our choices, about us going, you know, where we want to go for. I remember when my sister received this offer to go to UK, to Sheffield, to do engineering. And she was the first 5 girls from Sri Putri, at that time it was Kolam Air, was going to be sent abroad. And they are from the Malay medium, you know, not from like TKC. They are definitely the English medium. While my sister was having some doubt, it was my father who said, go, go. And he was questioned by his friend. He said, why are you letting your girl to go? And you're not there. And I remember what my father said. My father said, I have raised my children, you know, my boys and my girls equally. And I know that the God that, you know, Allah who looks after them here is the one who's going to look after them there. You know, so, wow, that was actually my father. Never questioned. Even when I was reading all those comics, you know, I don't know whether he wasn't so interested. I don't think so. He was definitely watching and looking at that, but he never actually, you know, direct me to read this book and that book. Okay, and because of that, I think I have full freedom to choose whatever books that but I don't know why and how. This is part of, which is still puzzle me. I do not know how my parents raised me up to be so comfortable about being me. I never wanted to be another person. Okay, I remember I was the only one wearing tudung in 1979 in my classroom. Okay, that was the time where nobody actually wears tudung, but I was already covering up. And my friends would say, Harlina, why did you cover up? You know, you look prettier without your tudung. I said, oh, really? And I said, you know, my father is a pagi. That was my answer. Okay, I want to wear like this. And it was mainly to honor my father. When it wasn't my father who said, you have to wear this. No, it was more of my sister. my sister was very diplomatic and saying, do you love Bapa? He said, of course. I said, you need to, since we are really a big girl now, we need to cover up because that is what Islam wants. Otherwise people will say, apalah nak qadi ni kan. And I was still like, I need to protect my father from that. So it was more of that, okay? And when my friends were saying, why are you covering up? I said, look, my father is a qadi, and none of you are actually daughters of a qadi like me. You can wear whatever you want, but I will stick to this, So that was about my father. Okay.
Something that stood out, because I come from the literature background, so I'm trained to look at books from a particular perspective. I'm trained to look at stories from a particular perspective, and I do the same with my students, my undergraduate, my graduate, and my postgraduate students. So when we're reading, it's not just stories, it's not just characters, it's not just conflicts. So you go deeper into it. You bring different lenses into it. And I'm fascinated by the way you speak of how you approach books. You talked about vocabulary expansion. You talked about preposition. You talked about conflict. So was there anyone seminal in your life that kind of helped you approach reading in a particular way? Like, who taught you how to read? Not read as in ikra, like actually reading it, but read as in deciphering what you're reading, because that requires a kind of an art of reflection. So you're reading, but what you're reading can just be purely entertainment, right? But by the sound of it, when you're reading, it made an impact in your life. Yeah. So who taught you that books can impact you? Stories especially can impact you. Was there anyone, or did you go to a course, or was there a class that you attended at the undergraduate, or? I'm sorry to put you in a spot. If I'm asking you silly questions, just tell me, right? I'm not going to answer that.
No, it's not silly, but to be honest, well, of course, I had been influenced by the people around me. But specifically to answer that question, I cannot name one person who has actually taught me how to read like that. Most probably, I was and still is. Somebody who is quite reflective from the start, all right? And reflection become a part of, it's a daily, it's always, so what are the lessons learned? It's always that,
Right.
And that happens quite early. I think during Asterix Obelix, I did not realize that, but then I noticed, even now with the Palestinian issue, and I have to thank Asterix Obelix for that in resistance, resisting from being conquered, So I did not realize how much that comic that I read when I was 12 has more or less put the foundation for my subsequent, growth. So most probably nobody, right? I'm sorry, but I'm thinking hard. It's more of me maybe getting a bit of this and that, and I just put all the jigsaw puzzle together.
Right. You're a very ambitious person. I don't think anyone will be surprised with my statement there, right? So and I like the fact that your ambition is grounded not just in the effort that you make towards improving yourself in your discipline, in your social cause, but also in the kind of books that puts an impression on you, right? So I appreciate that very much. So for those of us out there who may feel like reading is not for them, that they just, they get bored, especially in current age. I think I'm in my 50s as well, thank God. Managed to get this far in one piece, alhamdulillah. But we didn't live through the age of the social media, right? So we didn't live through the age, which I think is a more challenging age, where you're bombarded with all these images, in instant gratification, short Twitter messages. So it's a bit more challenging to sit down with a book, to actually flip through, spend 20 minutes, half an hour. So how did you build that habit Like, is it like something you do every night before you sleep, or, you know, like building the habit of reading? And what would you tell our young learners and readers?
Okay. A few things here, right? I guess we are closing, yeah? We are more or less concluding this session. When you buy a book, you do not have that. You should not have the intention of reading it cover to cover, and you need to do that before you buy the next book or you reach for another book. Yeah. No. This is how we readers read our books. First, of course, we have to judge a book by its cover juga lah, right? You know, like, and also reviews from others, kan? But I guess now it's more like whenever I go to all these bookshop, as I said, I'm always very excited to experience which of these books are going to call me. You know, like that's a bit more supernatural, I guess. But I know that excitement is already something then. And finally, when you get hold of a book and you just get attracted to it, just buy it. You know, if you have the expenses, yeah. So and I think books is something like if you spend on it, you will always have more resources to spend on another books, you know. It is not something that will make you poor, no, okay? Just take it from me. When I was a student, I think half of my scholarship would be on books. I did not have to go to library every time to prepare for my exam because I have enough revision in the room. And my room became the library of my friends, okay? They will come in and borrow this and that because I always feel that I need to have that book, okay? And I still have those books until now, okay? Now, that is how to pick up your books. You are not going to actually read cover to cover, but you are just going to open up the book and just read the one that attracts you. And it's just like reading the Quran actually, right? Where, you know, you have to read the Quran like the Quran actually speaks to you. And even if you are reading it again and again, the significance of certain surah for this period of time is different than maybe 2 years ago when you're reading it. Because you are, you know, going through your own, you know, dynamic of your lives. And I realized that it's not just the Quran nowadays that did that to me. It is also the books that I have. You know, whenever I open up, you know, it is always something that, yeah, this is the thing that I need to, and it's always be the one, you know, it's always a kind of statement that make me think further, okay? So that is about picking up the books, all right? Now, the second thing is that now in our time of, you know, there are just so many things to be done at the same time, even though when we are locked down in our house, yeah, we are still quite busy in a way, you know, having this kind of session. I look at my book reading as my respite, as my you know, yeah, my time out. And this is where I have my solitude. I have my armchair, and my children will know it. And it's just next to you have to have your favorite reading spot, okay? And this is when you will go to, and my children and my husband will know that when I'm actually in that mode,
don't disturb mommy.
I'm oblivious, okay? So like, you can talk to me, but I will say, what is it? Because I was actually, you know, concentrating on my books. So that becomes a kind of oasis in our, you know, our desert. And of course, when you have that kind of attitude, you cannot wait to go and hold your book. I'm not into ebooks, Ryan, was right, because we are that generation, okay? But I still think that this physical book is something that I need to hold, I need to smell. Of course, I don't have to taste it, but I need to have it in my hand, okay? So, and I guess that is the first step for you to love reading. Just, you know, get books around you, yeah? And I hope that is also what the car books project that my academy is trying to propose is going to help out for that, you know, love of reading.
Okay, so maybe have a corner in your room, even if you don't have a large house, have a corner where that's your designated reading spot. So every time you look at it, it associates you with the books that you are wanting to read, right? And have some piles and have a niche area and niche time of your day, so nobody can disturb you. Maybe even disconnect from the phone and switch off your phone or put it on vibration or whatever, and then spend some time there. Yeah. Brilliant suggestions. I have there is a question from one of my students because this is part of a guest lecturing session from for my course, Literature for Emotional Intelligence, a quick pitch for my course there. And one of my students has asked a very brilliant question, Prof, related to the question that I asked about the influence, people that influence you. I want to read the entire question to get it right. Okay, I had asked just now about one person who influenced your reading course. Was it more because you were searching for something in your life at that moment? Brilliant question, Aiman.
Yeah. Well, most probably, yeah, I guess just like how my father allowed me to just pick and choose my reading, I really enjoy that freedom to pick and choose whatever books that I want to read, okay? Because of that, most probably, I am not so much influenced by one person, choice of reading. But I always know that any leader, he or she is definitely a reader as well, okay? And when you want to write, you have to read maybe 10 times more, right? And that is something that for any writer, they know this. When you have your writer, when you have that time where you suddenly just have a blackout of your idea, it is always because you are not reading and you are not sort of contemplating to what you are reading. I am now thinking that I might need to write stories, okay, and tell the stories from my perspective. And at this age, right, there's so many stories that we might want to share because there's so many lessons in that. Okay.
On that note, Prof. Ahmad Kamal, my boss at Pengajaran, has also asked the same thing. He says, Tanya Datuk Harlina, impressive. Ada cadangan mau tulis buku sendiri. That was before Prof showed your writing repertoire, your books. But we look forward to your stories as well. I think you're a storyteller. Coming from the literature program, I can see that the flair for storytelling is there as well. Dr. Ravi is here also from my program. Dr. Ravi, do you want to ask a question to Prof. Harlina?
Yeah, actually with Prof. Harlina, I would like to engage in a conversation, but I know that time is not going to permit that. But Prof, do you remember me?
Yeah.
You were my ketua kumpulan in Port Dickson.
Yes, of course, Ravi.
Yeah, I was intrigued when Rai put up this topic of this talk. Okay, I said, finally we get to listen to someone not from literature.
Right, that's exactly my point.
Yes.
I've got a few lists of awesome professors who are from the humanities.
Yes.
Science. Yeah.
So, I was really happy when you put up those comics because I grew up on those material as well. Dandy,
Oh, yes.
I used to love Desperate Dan in
Desperate Dan, yes. Yeah.
So, I was thinking, during our time, I'm not sure about the background. I grew up in a plantation and later in a kampong, and we didn't have a TV even in our house.
All right.
So we sank into reading. That was our pastime.
Okay.
And I buried myself in the library and had pretty much read everything there was to read in the school libraries. So that was my background and that was my motivation. But I was wondering, in your case, so maybe that's the first question, but I think one of the students already asked something similar, your motivations and how you became such an avid reader. The other thing is, these days, like Dr. Rai and me, we're always trying to inspire our students in the literature class to cultivate this habit of reading. Reading just for the sheer pleasure of reading, not because it's a prescribed text in the course.
Yeah, an assignment, yeah.
Yeah, not because it's an assignment. We want them to read as a habit. I mean, we know about all those things that reading makes character, builds character. Reading maketh a man, right? That's what they say. But in the age of social media, I would like your opinion on this, coming from non-humanities. How relevant do you think such a pastime is? Because they are quite buried in this social media and they are motivated, I can see, by visuals more than words like we were. That's one thing. How relevant do you think it is for the current generation to be readers like we used to be? And if you see that there is a good reason for them to be readers, avid readers, what do you think they will get out of it that they're not getting from social media?
Okay.
Great question.
That requires 1 more hour to answer.
I would like your perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Firstly, our children are being raised by us. Okay, they are actually growing up in our house. So whatever culture that your house or your family has, that is going to be the foundation. Just like how I relate about my background. Yeah. And now that I know, we are learning through different ways. There are people who know more of words and they need to read. There are people more of visual learner. They are more of auditory. Okay, so to me, all these books materials should be appearing in all those modalities. So our younger generation would not miss out, the content of these great books. Okay. What I'm trying to say is, Ravi, because during our time agaknya kan, you don't have TV in your house. I actually had, in 1969, my father bought the first idiot box in our house, and the picture that I recall was actually the Neil Armstrong landed on moon. Okay, that was in 1969. I was 3 years old. My father bought the TV just before those whole event. Okay, so that was it. But now, at that time, I wasn't so much into TV because I realized that I am more of when I learn, I tend to look more into text. So that is, but of course, visual is also very important. And of course, when we are teaching now, we celebrate all these different learners. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say, Ravi, we have to use all this. That is part of what Academy Dr. Har is trying to do. We try to use this digital technology that we have, so that we bring all this into this platform, so that our younger generation are not going to miss out Shakespeare, are not going to miss out Hamka, are not going to miss out all this, where most probably last time, it is, this author's world is only open up for those who read. Yeah. But now we need to open it up to everyone using all these modalities. And just to share with you, Rai and Ravi and the rest, one of the projects in Academy Dr. Har is to have podcasts, audio siar. Yeah? And the first podcast that we had is on Hamka. Because Hamka wrote so many beautiful, pieces, and I always enjoy it. And it's not just those romance novel. There is another, we can have one webinar on Hamka alone. So, and this podcast is actually trying to tell the young generation who Hamka was and why, he is definitely a person you need to immerse yourself in. So, and this is definitely, this podcast is for those who are more, learning through auditory. Okay, so I think that is our challenge, Ravi. We need to, and of course, we, well, as much as you want people to read, right? But we have to celebrate this development as well. The challenge is now for us teachers, Ravi and Rai, to dissect these books and all our, reading materials, and how do we present that to our younger generation? And to me, that you cannot retire from that kind of responsibility, Ravi. And I think we should, and because of that, we ourselves need to relearn new things, unlearn the old things, and learn new things. So we have to start from ourselves, so that we do not deprive our younger generation from that enjoyable piece that we read, the classic that we have, okay? Wuthering Heights.
I hope they don't see us as dinosaurs.
They are seeing us as dinosaurs, Ravi. Don't worry about that, okay? But we are definitely a very, intriguing and exciting dinosaurs, and we stand out against all the other dinosaurs. Okay.
I would like to just add my 2 cents into that is that there's something called audiobooks. So if you're not into actual reading the book, you may want to listen to it instead, you know. So audiobooks is definitely something that is quite accessible, you know, and you may be doing other things whilst you are listening to the book that you're going through for the week. So that will be something as well. Okay, I have a question here also from my friend Dr. Azmin from Pengajaran and FSC. I think during our childhood and teenhood, we chose the books, but for me, lepas berada dalam bidang pendidikan and now being a leader, I tend to choose mostly books according to my field, like math, science, thinking books, as well as leadership-related books. Is that the same with Prof? Yeah,
okay. Thanks, Min. Yeah, in the beginning too, I totally agree with you. You know, you tend to say, no, guys, it's not for me. I need to read more of this book. But after a while, I start to stop that, me choosing the books, and I allow myself to be chosen by the books again. You know, so like, and because when I'm actually in this, I feel that reading, the pleasure of reading has started to dwindle. You know, when I need to read this book, macam tu kan. Tapi macam tadi macam Rai was saying, not because of it's an assignment. So and well, I think you are in that stage of my life at that time, kan, when I need to read this, I need to read that. Of course, the journals as well, kan. I need to read the journal because that's in the journal clubs and everything, kan, to update and upgrade myself. But then maybe lately, I start to let myself loose again and let the book choose me. And I start to get that you know, that genuine pleasure on reading again. Yeah, so tak apa, Min, you are in that phase. Later on, you will know what I mean, what I'm trying to tell you. Okay.
Macam lah tua sangat.
Taklah.
Macam lah dia tua sangat. Okay, thank you so much. Is there any other questions from anybody before we conclude? We have about a minute before we conclude.
Okay. I would like to thank you, Rai. Thank you so much. This
was my pleasure. I remember approaching Prof. Harlina about 2 years ago about this project. You know, so it's 2 years in the making, but alhamdulillah, we finally found, and I think pandemic has allowed us another avenue. So I'm blessed to have this opportunity and to share it with a wider audience instead of just the two of us having a good chat over a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, you know. So thank you so much for making time, for preparing, for going down memory lane and digging out all those book covers, and I'm sure that was fun for you. Yeah. But it was a huge pleasure for me. My to-do list, one of the to-do lists is to pick up How to Be a Beautiful Mind. So I want to read that one. I've read Howard Gardner's 5 Minds of the Future, and I love that very much. And I want to read How to Be a Beautiful Mind. I think that's my latest to-do list for me. So thank you so much for this opportunity and this experience going down memory lane with you, and for being so candid. Mills and Boons, really? I mean, seriously.
Barbara Cartland.
You know, but I'm a romance geek as my pastime, because I read critical literature and I just need to kind of unwind. So romance is my go-to unwind moments, you know, so I appreciate that. But thank you so much. You know, as usual, you've always been honest and open with us, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your friendship and your time.
Thanks,
and final words from you, if there's anything, you know, that you wanna inform the audience, go ahead.
After this lockdown, you go to the bookshops, you know, and just see which book is going to pick you up and choose you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Without further ado, I return it back to Mike. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.